everyone. This week in English 750, topics in textual criticism, information, literacy, and revolution across the 14th century, we're returning to another text we've discussed earlier this semester, Morte D'Arthur by Thomas Malory. Last time with this text, we talked about women and knightly honor in the story, which I'll link that video down below in the description if you're interested. But this time, I want to dig into a couple representations of masculinity in kingship, especially with Sir Galahad and King Arthur. I also want to discuss how the Honorable Sir Galahad sometimes is represented by having qualities closer to women in the story, such as Sir Percival's unnamed sister, but nonetheless is considered one of the best and most valiant knights, even, obtaining the Grail. This suggests to me that qualities of virtuous masculinity and virtuous femininity weren't as separate and distinct during this period as I previously thought. So, the first point that struck out to me was the celebration of Sir Galahad's virginity in the novel, as besides religious figures, such as some of the saints in the Golden Legend, I'd never really seen men being praised for being chaste like I have with women before. Earlier in the novel, it seems that masculinity was connected to the traditional narrative of sexual conquests, as even the often celebrated King Arthur had sexual relations with multiple women, even when married, which gave me the impression that it was normal during this period for manly men in power to use said power to get women, in some cases even against their will. I had thought that it was only women that were expected to be chaste or face the sins of hell, as that's often the double standard presented in a lot of early modern literature I've read at least. However, Morte D'Arthur totally uprooted that expectation for me by praising Sir Galahad for his virginity, and never ever suggesting that he was less of a man for it, while eventually condemning King Arthur, though not necessarily explicitly, for having these sexual exploits, especially the incestuous relationship with his sister. So, for example, Sir Galahad is celebrated and considered holy for his chaste behavior with, quote, "And then he," meaning King Mordrains, "dressed him against him, and said, Galahad, the servant of Jesus Christ, whom coming I have abidden so long, now embrace me, and let me rest on thy breast, so that I may rest between thine arms, for thou art a clean virgin above all knights, is the flower of the lily in whom virginity is signified, and thou art the rose in which the flower of all good virtue, in the color of fire, for the fire of the Holy Ghost is take so in thee that my flesh, which was all dead of oldness, is become young again." End quote. With this, Galahad's virginity elevates him above all other knights, which must be part of the reason he's able to complete the quest for the Grail. In fact, being a virgin is so virtuous that he even allows Galahad to perform miracles, such as when he calmed a, quote, "well that boiled with great waves," end quote, with his hand, because the well burnt due to, quote, "a sign of lechery, the which was that time much used, but that heat might not abide Galahad's pure virginity," end quote. However, even though King Arthur himself is not chaste, part of the reason he's deemed a candidate for being king in the first place is because he also performed a miracle, which is described by, quote, "Arthur demonstrated his divine acceptability for kingship, initially through the miraculous evidence of the sword and the stone," end quote. Sir Galahad, too, becomes a king because of not only his previous miracles, but also the mysterious voice that suggests him to be king to begin with, which could be another miracle. The text states, quote, "When the king was dead, all the city was dismayed, and wist not who might be their king. Right as they were so in council, there came a voice among them, and bade them choose the youngest knight of them three to be their king, for he shall well maintain you and all yours," end quote. So, thus far, both King Arthur and Galahad became kings due to their miracles, but also because the people eventually consented for them to be king as well, as, quote, "one such principle explicit in the castigation of fellow Englishmen, is that the king must be accepted by the people. Good rule, or indeed any holdings onto the reins of power, requires consent." End quote. King Arthur was accepted by the common people, and Galahad was accepted with, quote, "So they made Galahad king by all the assent of the whole city." End quote. However, the stories for kingship and being virtuous individuals begin to diverge when Galahad is described with, quote, "In that thou hast seen the marvels of the Sangreal, in that thou hast been a clean maiden," end quote. And therefore Galahad died in peace, and, quote, "angels bear his soul up to heaven," end quote. King Arthur, on the other hand, is usurped by his son, has to engage in a battle, and is killed due to the products of his sexual and moral behavior in producing a child through incest. Even though Mallory doesn't mention this specifically as the reason for King Arthur's downfall, other Arthurian legends make it more obvious, such as, quote, "The French Morte D'Arthur presents the downfall of the kingdom as divine retribution for sexual sin, Arthur's incestuous begetting of Mordred, and Lancelot and Guinevere's adultery," end quote. Therefore, it seems that one's fate might hinge on being chaste and virtuous in these regards, as sinning in this fashion can lead to someone's downfall, despite other typically positive qualities. And there definitely is a case to be made that we can look at Lancelot and Guinevere through this lens too. Alright, so though Sir Galahad has some overlaps with King Arthur, and though they eventually diverge over this point of being chaste or not, Galahad still overlaps with Sir Percival's unnamed sister as well. Sometimes she's called the Grail heroine due to her lack of name in the narrative. Just as Galahad is a clean maiden, the Grail heroine is considered a clean maid too, with, quote, "What maid passes by here shall give this dish full of blood of her right arm," end quote, that the custom requires, and, quote, "A dish full of blood of a maid and clean virgin in will and in work," end quote, implying that since the Grail heroine is a chaste maid, her blood will be clean and free of sin too. Galahad's pureness allows him to snuff out flames and heal others, whereas the Grail heroine's blood is thought to possess such mystical healing powers, which connects being a virgin to being purer and potentially having less sin, but also connects to Jesus Christ himself, who could heal the sick. Therefore, the text might be making the case that chaste individuals are closer to Christ and God, and unfortunately King Arthur was not in those regards. While Jesus laid his hands on people to heal them like Galahad did, I wonder if there is also a connection between the Grail heroine's blood providing healing and the cleansing blood of communion. After all, Jesus had to die for humanity's sins, just as the Grail heroine must die to allegedly heal the sick lady, with, quote, "Madame, I am come to the death for to make you whole, for God's love prayeth for me," end quote. So just like Christ, she's willing to die to save another. Then, since Galahad and Percival find, quote, "the bodies of all the good maidens which were martyred for the sick lady's sake," end quote, the Grail heroine, Percival's sister, is almost elevated to sainthood through the aspect of being a martyr, just as the saints in the Golden Legend tales. So, through the tales we read for class from Le Morte D'Arthur, it is becoming apparent how important chaste and virgin-like behavior really was during this period. It is as it was entangled with not only miracles, but also potentially achieving a higher level of Christianity and closeness to God. Both men and women alike were celebrated for this behavior too, and the absence of it could possibly lead to ruin, just like what happened to King Arthur and what Merlin predicted, showing how crucial it was to stick to this particular behavior during this time, or so they taught. Of course, these teachings are very antiquated from a modern perspective. Anyway, that's it for this video. See you next time, and thank you so much for watching.